Hi, my name is Sophia, and this is my 8-week project in the form of a research paper. My research paper is about environmental justice in New York City. Environmental justice in New York City isn't just about pollution or parks. It's about the people, animals, and nature. New York City is the biggest city in the U.S., packed into 5 towns: Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island. Each town has its own special thing. Manhattan has skyscrapers and Wall Street. Brooklyn has an artsy vibe. Queens has great diversity. The Bronx has the Yankees Stadium. And Staten Island has a quieter feel. It's called the city that never sleeps because there's always something happening, from Broadway shows late at night to late night food spots. New York City is also very big for finance and fashion and media. Environmental justice is really about fairness. It means everyone should have clean air, safe water, and healthy places to live, no matter their race, income, or background. The problem is that low-income communities and communities of color often get stuck with more pollution, waste sites, and health risks, while wealthier areas enjoy better conditions. So this part of the essay reminds me of the left side that we talked about earlier in the class, about how the left side usually, that with the poor income residents, will get the more polluted areas and the more underdeveloped areas. So that part reminds me of this. The American Public Health Association explains that this isn't just an environmental issue, it's a public health one too, since things like asthma and heart disease show up more in those overburdened neighborhoods. Environmental justice in New York City comes down to one big issue. Not everyone gets the same shot at living in a healthy environment. The article, Environmental Issues in New York City, points out that low-income neighborhoods and communities of color have been hit hardest by pollution and bad planning decisions. Highways, waste facilities, and industrial sites were placed right in the middle of these areas, while wealthier neighborhoods got more parks, clean air, and better infrastructure. Because of this, places like the Bronx now have some of the highest asthma rates in the country. So the problem isn't just about garbage, it's about fairness. Some New Yorkers breathe clean air and enjoy green spaces, while others deal with toxic exposure and health problems every day. Environmental injustice doesn't just appear, it was built into the way cities and neighborhoods were planned out. The article, Environmental Justice, Roots, Impacts, and Urgent Solutions, says that things like redlining and segregation pushes low-income families and communities of color into areas with fewer resources and less political power. Again, with the left side having more environmental problems and underdeveloped areas. Once those neighborhoods were boxed in and made to be the lower-income areas, they become the go-to spots for highways, factories, and waste sites because they weren't seen as nice areas anymore. That meant more pollution, more health problems, and fewer green spaces compared to wealthier white areas. Air pollution is also a huge problem in New York City, and it's not just about foggy skies. It's about people's health. The article, Air Pollution and the Health of New Yorkers, the Impact of Fine Particles and Ozone, says that tiny particles in the air and ozone are dangerous. They contribute to thousands of early deaths every year and tens of thousands of emergency room visits for asthma. Most of this air pollution comes from everyday city life like traffic and heating systems. And it doesn't affect everyone equally. Kids, older adults, and people living in disadvantaged neighborhoods are hit the hardest. To improve air quality, New York City really needs more trees, and not just because they make the streets look nicer. Trees do tons of important things like clean the air, cool down neighborhoods during hot summers, and even help with flooding by soaking up rainwater. The problem is a lot of areas, especially low-income neighborhoods, don't have enough tree coverage. That means people there deal with hotter temperatures, worse air quality, and fewer green spaces to enjoy. New York City also has a big problem with rising water. With so much shoreline, neighborhoods built on landfill or right by the ocean are especially at risk. The article Rising Tides explains that melting glaciers, warmer oceans, and even the ground slowly sinking are all pushing sea levels higher. And the East Coast is rising faster than a lot of the other places. In a few decades, the city would see water levels climbing by several inches, and by the end of the century, it could be more than 5 feet. That means more flooding, stronger storms, and real danger for places like Coney Island, the Rockaways, Jamaica Bay, and parts of the Staten Island. The tough part is that many of these neighborhoods already struggle with inequality and lack of resources, so they're less prepared to deal with the impacts. Rising water in New York City isn't just about climate change. It's about protecting people and making sure every community has the support it needs. New York City is huge. About 8.8 million people lived there in 2020, and even with some ups and downs, it's still over 8.4 million. That makes it the most crowded big city in the U.S. Environmental injustice doesn't hit everyone the same way. It mostly lands in community and color and low-income neighborhoods. The article called New York City points out that these areas are often stuck living near highways, factories, or waste sites, which means they're breathing in more pollution and dealing with more toxic chemicals than wealthier neighborhoods. Kids in these communities get the worst of it because their bodies are still growing. So things like asthma and lead poisoning show up more often. Studies show that race can matter more than income when it comes to who's exposed to dirty air. Black, Hispanic, and Asian communities face high risks of premature death from pollution compared to white communities. So at the end of the day, environmental injustice is really about unfair systems that leave certain groups carrying the heaviest weight in environmental burdens. There have been a few events that have caused environmental issues. One being the Great Garbage Strike. Back in February 1968, New York City basically turned into one giant trash pile. Sanitation workers walked off the job to demand better pay and safer work conditions. And within just 9 days, more than 100,000 tons of garbage stacked up on the streets. Imagine sidewalks overflowing with bags of rotting food, the smell hanging in the air, and rats having a field day. It was chaos. People were furious, but at the same time, it showed just how much the city depends on the sanitation workers to keep things running. In the end, Mayor John Lindsay gave in and agreed to a raised wage, finally ending the strike. New York City's rat problem has gotten so bad that officials have even called a trash czar to manage it, and one of the most known groups was called River Rats. The article New York City has a rat problem. Officials have a plan to kick it from the curb, explain that these rats live along the city waterfronts, where garbage and food waste piles up and gives them endless meals. They're not just gross, they're a public health issue, spreading diseases and making life miserable for residents who have to deal with them every day. The city is experimenting with the new approaches, like changing how trash is stored and collected, to take away the rats' food supply. But getting rid of them is tough because rats are very adaptable and have learned to take advantage of the city's overflowing trash. New York City has already started improving environmental justice through its Plan NYC, which is all about making the city cleaner, healthier, and fairer. They've worked on reducing pollution from buildings, adding more green spaces, and making it easier to walk or bike safely. All things that help neighborhoods that usually get left behind. But the plan also looks ahead. By 2030, the city wants to reduce transportation emissions in half. And by 2060, the goal is to stop sewage from flowing untreated into the harbor. They're also pushing for better recycling so less waste ends up in landfills. The big idea is to make sure every community, especially the ones that have been ignored in the past, gets the resources and protection they need to deal with the climate change and enjoy a much healthier environment. Thank you for listening.